Absolutely, every year, guaranteed there will be one of these on the exam paper. This is what's known as a grouped frequency table. There are 5 main questions that they'll ask you about it. Now, there are a couple of others, but these are the 5 top ones. First of all, there are 3 types of diagram that they can ask you to draw. The first is a frequency polygon. The second is a cumulative frequency diagram. And the third is a histogram. So you'll be shown one of those grouped frequency tables, and they'll ask you to draw one of those 3 things. The other 2 big questions they might ask you is one of these: either find the median class interval or estimate the mean. Let's stick with the drawings to begin with, because people get these 3 confused every single time. The frequency polygon looks like that. It's a series of straight lines. That's where it gets the name polygon from. The table looks like that, and importantly, you plot the frequency against the midpoint. So here you'd plot the number 18 against the number 10, 22 against the number 30, 35 against the number 50, 15 against the number 70, and so forth. And that's different from what you do with the cumulative frequency diagram. Frequency polygon, plot the midpoint. Cumulative frequency diagram, plot the upper bound. So, cumulative frequency diagram is the one that looks like that. It's the one that always ends up looking a little bit like an S-shaped, like that. It's the one that we can use for estimating the median, lower quartile, and upper quartile. For this one, the table looks a little bit different. Importantly, you'll always start with a 0 for each class interval. If you're lucky, they will ask you to complete this table rather than giving it to you. I say if you're lucky because that's very easy to do. It's usually worth a couple of points. So for this one, you're going to plot this number, the cumulative frequency, against the upper bound, that number there. You'll know you've got it wrong if you accidentally plot against the midpoint. Instead of filling up the whole chart like this does, it would be about half the size and be squeezed into the left hand side. Once you've plotted the cumulative frequency diagram, there are 2 further questions they'll usually ask. One is to estimate the median, and that's the one you do by going halfway along and then down. Make sure you don't go halfway up to the top of this axis. This axis could be as tall as you want to make it. What's important is that we're going halfway along to the top of the graph. So in this case, if this graph ends at 32, sorry, I know that's not clear, but if that's 32, then halfway up would be at 16. They could also ask you to estimate the interquartile range. To do that, you've got to find the lower quartile and the upper quartile, and then find the difference between them. Again, this time you go a quarter of the way up for the lower quartile, 3/4 of the way up for the upper quartile. The last kind of diagram they can ask you to draw is the histogram, and this is the one that looks a bit like a bar chart, but instead of the height, it's the area that tells you the frequency. And that's this one here. Again, an important difference is that the width of these will be different. So instead of going from 0 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 60 in nice even spaces, it could be, like in this example, 0 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 60. So it will not have even widths. The final 2 questions that are very common relate directly to the table. They don't necessarily involve drawing anything. They can ask you to find the median class interval, or they can ask you to estimate the mean. For the median class interval, that's asking you for one of these, so it's the 0 to 10, 10 to 20 notation that you write down as your answer. So let's draw this in. Your answer is going to look something like this. 20 less than or equal to x less than 40. And it's the group that has the middle person or the middle thing. If 60 things were being measured, for example, if the height of 60 trees were being measured, the median class interval is the interval that has the middle tree, tree number 30. To estimate the mean from a grouped frequency table, this is where you plot the midpoint of each interval, each class interval, times by the frequency. So don't plot it, work it out. Work out the midpoint times by the frequency. Once you've done that, add all of those up, and don't divide by how many groups there are. So don't divide by 5, like in this table. That's a very common mistake. Instead, what you've got to divide by is the total frequency. Divide by the total frequency. So if we looked at the original table, this one here, don't divide by 6, divide by all of these added up together.